broadcasting and podcasting 438 miles between each other on this Thursday, November the 12th, as we salute our veterans yesterday with Veterans Day. We welcome you inside the 48th total episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. George Koff with you alongside me, my good friend Desmond McLaughlin. And we're here to talk about Week 10 and how it was and how this week will be, especially with a big bunch of games being postponed and what that means for the rest of the college football season. Glad to have you with us as we reach the mid part of November and the end of the semester. However, don't worry that our podcast episodes, even when class is over, we will continue bringing them to you as long as there's college football. We'll make sure we'll keep you posted. And now I welcome in my good friend and co-host Desmond McLaughlin. Desmond, how are you doing on this Thursday afternoon?
Doing pretty good, George. Just sunny outside. More college football this week. Lots of news going around, especially regarding the Rockets. Interesting stuff. Chris Paul, too. News about him. Mock drafts, NBA. Me, basketball guy. It's good to see basketball starting to come back. Of course, we have NFL going. Lots of sports going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned NBA. I'll mention briefly, it's probably the shortest off season ever. We get the NBA draft next Wednesday. We get free agency for about 2 weeks, and we go right into the season on December 22nd. So quite a big, I feel like we just finished. The NBA Finals just finished like 3 weeks ago, or just about a month ago, actually. So LeBron's probably not very happy, I'll be honest. I bet the Lakers aren't very happy not getting that much rest to try to defend their title as we go into the 2020-2021 season. But it's 2020 still, anything can happen. And that takes us into this week's discussion of college football. Desmond, Texas Tech TCU played this past week. And once again, Columbia started. Okay, so Columbia started again, but another step in the wrong direction for the offense. So talk about it. 34-18 loss to the Horned Frogs. What did you see? What did you not like?
Well, Columbia did improve from last week, but to be a starter in the Big 12, he's going to need to improve just a little more. He did throw 230 yards and had more yards than Matt Dugan did, but he also threw an interception and only threw 56% off of 40 passes, which is not the best. So I still have hope in Bowman, and I still think that he is the better quarterback to have under center. Now, I do believe they are like 1-2 with Mr. Henry Houdini himself starting, but they did beat West Virginia as their only win, who is one of the lesser teams in the Big 12 right now. But I'm not going to take that away from him because he is still a freshman. But the offense looked terrible. The secondary looked better, a lot better. As I said, they held Matt Dugan to like 80 yards, which is insane. I know in the beginning of the season, I said that their secondary was trash. Every team's going to throw 200 plus, which is almost happened every single game, but they did good that game. But with the better defense, they lost their offense with only a field goal in the first half, which you can't have.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And Desmond, you mentioned on it there, it almost seems like as the offense is trending downward, the defense is trending upward because the defense was actually playing fairly well. They kept their team in it. And as long as you keep your team in it, you're in a good shape. But unfortunately, that offensive production is just not there. TJ Vasher finally saw the field again, and he wasn't very much of an impact. 2 receptions, 22 yards. That's not much. Maybe you can say that because he was injured in his return to the field, yeah. But again, that's still not much impact. And honestly, Desmond, this game was out of hand at the end of the third quarter. It was 27-10 TCU, and Texas Tech added some points there at the end, but really it was over. And so it makes you beg the question. Texas Tech, they've lost 2 straight after beating West Virginia. They're 2-5 with 1 win in conference. You've got Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Kansas. Are we going to see this team maybe, just maybe, get to 5-5? Or are we looking at a 3-7 season?
My best guess would be a 3-7 season. Yeah, definitely a win against Kansas. It'll be hard to get a win against OK State. I mean, maybe squeak win against Baylor, but I don't think that's going to happen.
And
And
speaking of Baylor, that's their opponent this week. Another heated rivalry game. That one had been played at AT&T Stadium for the last few years, and then last year it was moved back to the campus sites, and this year it's the first one back in Lubbock. So Desmond, obviously Texas Tech gets the home field advantage, and with that 25% capacity, there's a chance that could make an impact. What do you think is going to happen between Baylor and Texas Tech? These two teams are poor this year, to say the least. Baylor's 1-4, Texas Tech is 2-5.
I just think Baylor has the upper hand right now, but I think my guess here is that Baylor's going to get out to a good lead, and then Coach Wells is going to be like, man, just put Bowman back in there. I feel like Bowman's going to lead a charge towards the end, but I don't think it'll be enough. My guess is we're going to see some more play time from Bowman.
So what do you got as a score?
38-34. I think he's going to come out strong, but I think that the lead will be too big by that point.
Yeah, that's funny, Desmond. I actually have 38 points as well for Baylor, 38-28. Baylor beating the Red Raiders. And we might be wrong, Desmond. I don't know what Vegas sees, but they have Texas Tech as a 1-point favorite on the 3 p.m. kickoff on FS1 from Lubbock. So we'll see. This is a heated rivalry game. This is a rivalry game that's gone back and forth every single year. It's always been that way for the last 10 years or so. And I don't think this year is going to be any different. I think Baylor's found themselves in a lot of close games, and this is going to be another close game. So we'll see what happens. Now, let's shift gears here to maybe a not-so-close game. Desmond, I told you last week, I said when I watched the A&M Arkansas game, my exact words were, the offense for Texas A&M had by far the best performance from start to finish under Jimbo Fisher I had seen. Let's scratch that, because I must have been prophesying what they did against South Carolina, because that was a straight up domination. There was no question who was going to win that game from when the game was kicked off. It was South Carolina was poor, bad. They maybe looked decent towards the end of the game, but Desmond, that was just brutal. Khaled Mond looked good. Isaiah Spiller was used appropriately. Everything was clicking. 48-3. What were your thoughts before I go into obviously what the well-known postponements for this Aggie squad?
I like what you said. Kellen Mond's definitely improving, getting that draft stock up, getting confidence in A&M. I just checked, y'all are like on a 6-game win streak right now?
Not quite. We've won 4 in a row. So,
but they're looking really good right now. I mean, you're on the top 10. Y'all don't play this week, right? Because of
that is correct. Yeah, the Tennessee, and I'll get to the Tennessee game in just a second. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think you had texted me and said our playoffs hope are kind of diminished. I wanted to hear more information about what you meant by that. Like, why do you think it's unlikely for y'all still to make a push for that?
Yeah, immediately as the game finished, I switched over to probably the game that every single American was watching, called Clemson Notre Dame. And, rooting for Clemson to win, because you want to put Notre Dame down in the dumps. You want Notre Dame to be out of this overrated conversation, because they're always up top. And, I'm going to be on the record. Ian Book is not a good quarterback. I'm sorry, Fighting Irish fans. Ian Book is just not. He had 312 passing yards and a touchdown in a double overtime game. They could have put in whoever their backup was, and he probably could have done the same thing. Like, that's the thing, is he doesn't have an impact. Notre Dame is doing everything on the ground, and they're doing all they can there. His passing game means nothing. And so I think his name is Kylan Williams, I think is the running back for Notre Dame. The man had like 5 touchdowns on the ground, or 4 touchdowns. It was crazy. We hadn't seen a performance like that at Notre Dame since, Reggie Bush, really, with USC and the Bush push in 2005. But I think Notre Dame beating Clemson ruins A&M's hopes. They need Notre Dame to lose in the ACC championship game, and maybe even lose again. They need Florida to get beat by Bama badly to make that loss to Bama look better for A&M. We need a lot of dominoes to fall the right way, and the problem is that one domino with Notre Dame is in the way. And so one of the big dominoes, though, Desmond, is A&M's got to play every single game. We cannot afford a cancellation at this point. And speaking of cancellations and postponements, that leads to this week's game. For those that are unaware, Texas A&M had a member of the football team test positive for COVID-19 prior to the South Carolina game. His name, Damani Richardson, he's a safety, did not travel with the team. He was in isolation from Thursday last week. However, upon returning to College Station on Sunday, the Texas A&M team had 3 additional positive cases within the program, 2 players and an additional staff member. Due to that, they were all put into isolation, and they are doing well, according to Josh Bjork, the athletic director, and Jimbo Fisher, head coach. However, the main problem was with contact tracing. In the SEC, if they go by the CDC rules, which is if you spent 30 minutes or more with a member with somebody who's been infected with COVID-19, and you're within 6 feet of them, you're considered a high contact personnel or person, in high contact, and therefore you must go into isolation and quarantine. With that being said, SEC guidelines have that if you are in contact tracing, you cannot, even if you test negative, if you consistently test negative, you must be in contact tracing for the entire 14-day quarantine, which puts the game against Ole Miss next week on the 21st in question, but more specifically made the game against Tennessee this week in Knoxville postponed until December 12th. That time and TV will be to be determined as we get closer to December 12th. But yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal, Desmond. This A&M football team was in a groove. They were playing, scoring at least 40 points in 3 of the last 4 games. They were on this offensive attack that we've never seen from an A&M team recently. I think the closest you could maybe argue is 2012 with Johnny Manziel, or 2013 even. And so now the question is, what does this mean for A&M? Are we going to see maybe a team that reverts back to A&M Vanderbilt, to that first game of the season when you had a nice long layoff and you come back and you're not the same team? What are we going to see is the main question. I still think they're going to be fine. But it begs the question. Did you have any thoughts you wanted to add there?
No, I agree with what you said at the beginning. If A&M really just want to playoff push, they can't afford to be losing more games. And we'll be talking about that more later, about what happens now that we're seeing more and more games being postponed or canceled. And really hard. I feel this year definitely will be a hard year for the CFP committee to be like, some of these good games got canceled. What's going on with the Big Ten, their schedule and stuff. It'll be really hard for them to decide.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be real interesting. The first college football playoff rankings come out in 2 weeks on November 24th. And that was already moved. Normally, at this point in the season, we'd already have our first and even second rankings of the year. So obviously giving the college football playoff committee more time to decide. I won't be surprised to see A&M in the top 5 if that's the case. I've seen that they might be top 6, top 7. A&M is currently number 5 in the AP poll, with Cincinnati and Florida right behind them, and BYU. So we'll see. We'll end up seeing what happens. But yeah, Desmond, it brings a big factor into how A&M's playoff chances could be impacted. Either way, honestly, as an A&M fan and as a student, and as somebody who is, the Aggies are my team, I would be perfectly fine with going to like the Cotton Bowl or something, a big New Year's Six bowl, even if we don't get to the playoff, because it shows how much Jimbo has grown. Jimbo has grown this program. He's built his culture. People are officially buying in now. And you're getting to the point where next year, after next year's recruiting class, we're going to have a fully, all in with Jimbo, because you still have Summerlin recruits on the roster. i.e. Kellen Mond, and Isaiah Spiller. So you just have to get over that I guess that proverbial hump of kind of buying in, and once you do, everything's downhill. Go look at Nick Saban. Nick Saban, his first 3 years in at Alabama, he had to get over that hump, and once he did, he's now a superstar. So I think it'll be really interesting how you know what the rest of the season means in looking forward to 2021. But I don't think we should be worried. I think A&M's got to get healthy. That's the important thing. I'd rather them get healthy and postpone 2 games than play a game and then infect the other team because of protocol not taking properly. Um, so get healthy, Aggies, get healthy. They have not released names that are in contact tracing, so we don't know who. We know that there was the offensive line was impacted because that's especially what Jimbo said was that we were the personnel. It was offensive linemen, but that's about it. So we don't know. For all we know, Kellen Mond might be in the contact tracing, but that's just a speculation. So we'll see. Speaking of Alabama, as I mentioned, they were one of 8 games, Desmond, 8 games this week that have been postponed due to coronavirus and COVID-19 issues among college football. So it kind of makes our dynamic a little interesting. The Big 12 is really confusing. I forgot that the Pac-12 returned because the Pac-12 was absolute garbage the last week. Sorry, Pac-12, but you can't compete. You're not playing the type of football that everyone else has been playing. Even the Big Ten is playing better football than you are, and they've been back for 2 extra weeks. So maybe give them time, but not likely. Notre Dame has the inside track to the ACC championship now. They just can't lose. They lose again, they're kind of screwed because then it makes a 3-way tie between Notre Dame, Clemson, and Miami. And we'll talk about Miami in just a second, Desmond, you and De'Ara King. But I think the main question is trying to just talk about, there's no ranked on ranked matchups this week. College game day is at the Masters, for crying out loud. They're not even at a football game this week. So what is there to watch this week, Desmond? What should we be looking forward to?
I did notice that. Just choosing the games this week. I mean, pretty much was everything. All the games were pretty much straightforward. I kind of had to stretch my upset pick this week, just so I could have an upset pick. Really.
Yeah, me too.
But you're right. What is there to watch this weekend? I mean, might be a weekend to half watch college football, half catch up on some Netflix shows.
I was just about to say, Desmond, it would be the type of weekend that you get the the lawnmower out and mow your grass and clean the pool and do the housekeeping chores around the house. Like maybe have it on in the background. Heck, if you really want to, put up your Christmas tree. I'm always a guy to wait until.
All right, let's
look. I'm always a guy to wait until after Thanksgiving. But in our 2020 this year, we need some sort of happiness. Okay. But yeah, I'm not telling you to put up your Christmas tree. This is a suggestion. If you're a college football fan like Desmond and I, we're telling you that there's not really good games on TV this week. So use that time wisely. There. End of statement. We move on to our main topic of the podcast. And Desmond, let's talk about these postponed games. Ohio State, Maryland, Bama, LSU, Auburn, Mississippi State, Georgia, Missouri, Memphis, Navy. Games, and that's just this week, Desmond. We've had games postponed starting with week 1. We had 3 games postponed week 1, and the schedules is getting more and more and more. At one point, I think we had 5 games on December 12th at the start of the season. We now have 40 Division I football games scheduled for December 12th, a weekend that we don't normally see college football. So my question to you, Desmond, is, obviously we'd be approaching the last few weeks of the season. We're not even halfway for some conferences and for some teams, not even quite over that halfway hump. So what does this impact mean? Extending that regular season until December 19th, which is possible if conference championship games get pushed back. What does that mean for teams? What does that look like as far as what they're thinking in the locker room or inside these programs?
Well, I definitely think that they're going to be open to a lot. I really have some respect for college football athletes this year because they've had to adapt, stay adaptable, play through the virus and everything. Because at any second, if a couple players on their team get the virus, they're losing a couple games. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these kids are fighting for a chance to play pro. A lot of these kids, these are dreams that they've had since they're young. These are kids who may have not grown out of the best place, had the best family. So this is kind of a way for them to, not revert back to that, to get a life of their own, maybe support family back home. You know what I'm saying? So of course they're willing to play as many games as they want, but also as a player, it takes a toll on your body sometimes. That's why lately, especially with the NBA, we're seeing more rest days. Not many players playing back to back. I know cultural players don't play as much as them, but they're also a little bit younger. And of course, everyone likes to play, but it takes a toll on your body sometimes. And more games also expose more chances to COVID. So I know that they are, of course, to be smart things to make up the games and play. But what's going to happen is like for some reason extending the game's just going to stop. Games being canceled because of COVID. So that's also a thing to look out. Also from my standpoint too, you gotta look out for, as you said, the NBA season starting back up around the 22nd. For some other people, they're gonna be switching back to watching NBA. New teams, especially during the beginning of the season. So you're gonna see a little bit shift of focus here and there. And then you have the Christmas holidays coming up. But it'll be interesting. But of course, as I said, these kids are gonna stay ready, and they just have to stay hungry because it's really easy to lose your focus, especially during the holidays, especially when it starts kind of dragging on a little bit. They dragging more, you know what I'm saying? Because you're ready, you're anticipating, you're thinking about, hey, what are my chances of, making the playoffs? What are my chances of doing this? And then they keep adding more games. You gotta shift focus because that's what you're always thinking about. What's the next part? Where's the next goal? You know what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a lot of good points there. I think one of the key things to think about too is something you mentioned about the ratings. Now, ratings aren't necessarily something that drives college football because we all know about equal revenue sharing, and with the revenue sharing, every school gets the same amount of money with the conferences. And so ratings aren't necessarily affected by that. But like with ESPN, it means that airtime, we're not going to see as much college football as we've been seeing on the airwaves on Saturdays, because Saturdays, as we get closer to December, are going to become NBA Saturdays. They do their
And
NBA,
NFL too, a little bit.
yeah, and NFL. They use it's like the second to last week in December, or second to last week in December. They use for NFL because normally there's no college football. That's an antitrust act that goes back to the 1950s, I believe, or 60s, something like that, which is crazy. So yeah, I think it kind of takes into account that we went from no sports from March to July to all the sports in August and September to now just college football, really the month of October to November. And we're going
to. I want to say real quick, I don't know if anyone's noticed this year, but I don't know if it's because they've had a shorter, training camps and stuff like that, but has anyone noticed how many injuries have gone into the NFL this year?
Yes.
I feel like there's a lot more than usual.
Yeah, and that was one thing that Dave mentioned. Adam Schefter said it a few weeks ago, when Saquon got hurt, or that week we had it was like 13 injuries among NFL, is that it has to do with training camp. It has to do with these shortened, no preseason, no chance to get a little bit of play time, just going straight in. It's funny. We haven't really seen that in college football. I feel like college football has definitely been more gradual if there's been injuries, but it's not been like where we've had 1 week where it's just completely devastating. But I do think that there is a big impact, and the big impact is also, Desmond, theoretically, we're looking at college football that we could get from the end of August to the end of January, because with bowl season, with the college football playoff, we're looking at games all the way through December and all the way through January, which is kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of cool because it's not something that you get. And then even if we want to wrap football as a whole, we're getting football from August until February with the Super Bowl, assuming everything happens there. So lots to enjoy in the NBA and MLB free agency watch will be starting up here soon, and NHL will be back hopefully in January, and everything's gonna be exciting too. Already back. As we flip the calendar to 2021, and hopefully things will start to be better than 2020. I think everyone's ready to put 2020 in the rearview mirror, and I think our upset picks are as well as we shift ahead to those all important upset picks in the games of the week. Desmond, I should have taken your advice on Arizona State. I really should have taken your advice on Arizona State. When you choke a 27-14 lead in a minute and 45 seconds and lose by one, it hurts.
George, I can't make this up, man. At least there's one thing I was right. And I told you, George, I said they will lose by less than 7 points. That's what they always do. I said they're not a bad football team, but they always find a way to lose by less than 7. And that's why it was annoying. Imagine having a small school. Every single game they lost by less than 7.
Couldn't be me. Well,
Couldn't be me either this year either.
Oh, that's true. Well, speaking of your upset pick, Desmond, Virginia Tech got kind of screwed over. They screwed themselves over, really. Not even that they got screwed over. They screwed themselves over. They blocked the game-winning field goal attempt, run it back for a touchdown. Then it's called for a timeout because Virginia Tech was like, you know what? Let's call for a timeout. Liberty didn't play. Runs one more play. Then they kick the field goal and win the football game.
I was really about to text you, George, and be like, yeah, coming back on the upset, boy.
And then you weren't. So disappointing. But we're both trying to get on the right side of things. I'm trying to stay above the 500 line. Desmond's trying to get closer to that 500 line. And maybe this will be the week that we do this as we move ahead into our game picks, starting with an ACC matchup between the Wake Forest Deacons and the North Carolina Tar Heels. Desmond, I know we've had North Carolina on this list almost every single week, but I think the main importance of this matchup, Desmond, don't look now, but Wake Forest is on a 4-game winning streak, and the North Carolina Tar Heels have been all over the place. They either show up or they somehow leave their playing on the field or on the bus because, as we saw against Virginia and as we saw against Florida State, they, back themselves into a corner that they can't come back from. So, but they did whoop up on Duke last week. I don't know if you saw that, but they beat Duke 56-27. I believe it was 35-7 at the half. It was bad. It was real bad. I'm taking North Carolina in this one, but closer than the experts think. I've got it by a touchdown, 42-35. What do you got?
George, I'll one-up you. I got it by a point.
Oh.
28-27. And Mac Brown, they trust, not me. I don't trust Mac Brown, but Mac Brown, they trust. You know what I'm saying? I remember at the beginning of the season, George, I don't know if it was you or you were saying that. Someone else was saying that everyone was like, oh, UNC is good this year. I feel like this year I'm really good at seeing who's not good. I don't think I'm choosing the winners, but I'm choosing the losers correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I told you, I said, UNC is overrated, man. Like, just wait, give it a couple weeks. Look at this. They're not even ranked right now. They're struggling, and they did have a big win against Duke. But as I said last week when I was talking about the D lineman from Duke, I said Duke's not a very good football team. So the
man balled out though. The man balled out. I don't know
because he's good. He's good. I'm telling you, he's gonna be a top 10 draft pick easy.
I think he had like 8 tackles or something. It was ridiculous. I was like, Desmond was right on to something, but this guy, poor guy, is on a team that is absolute garbage. It's like TJ Vasher, our boy TJ Vasher for Texas Tech. Like, can we get TJ Vasher and this defensive lineman from Duke on a Alabama or Ohio State or something where they're going to get more recognizable and like get more playing time and be on a good team? Like, don't be doing this to my guys that are 1-6 in ACC play to Duke. Like, but no, I think it should be a good game there. And that's ACC Network's 11 a.m. game from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. All right, Desmond, we move ahead to a game that we're not even sure if it's going to be played. We included it here because reports say that it will. It's the Saturday night football game in Ann Arbor, Michigan, between the 13th ranked Wisconsin Badgers and the Michigan Wolverines, who are unranked after losing their last 2 games to Michigan State and then getting walloped by Indiana in a game that, oh boy, Desmond, you looked bad on that. That pick looked bad last week after you said that Michigan would come out and stop the bleeding, but now they're still looking to stop the bleeding against Wisconsin. Um, Unfortunately, Desmond, I don't think Wisconsin or Michigan gets it done. I think Wisconsin is a good team. I think, they've had some COVID issues, but I think they get over it. And even if this game is not played, I still would have thought that Wisconsin would get the win. And I do. I think it's going to be big. I think the nightmare continues for Jim Harbaugh. I think this is his last season at Michigan. Because we know he's not going to beat Ohio State. That's inevitable. So I have the Wisconsin Badgers eating up, and jumping around the Michigan Wolverines, 40-20.
Well, George, I don't know if you remember a couple weeks ago, I had a cry for help with Texas University of Texas, my fault. I said, I picked you, UT, for many weeks in a row, and you've lost. This is my last chance. And what they do, they came out, they won the next 2 weeks, George. This is my cry for help. Jim Harbaugh, what's the word? I vouched for you. I vouched for you in the beginning of the season, saying that this was your year, and you were letting me down. You were making me look embarrassed in front of my partner here. Help me out. This is my last week. I don't care if you play Texas State next week. If you lose this week, I'm not choosing you again. Michigan will upset 38-34.
Is that your upset of the week?
That is my upset. Again, George, I told you, looking at the games, there was only one other game where I could say maybe, but these games are pretty straightforward for the most part.
Okay, well, we'll see if Desmond's right. 6:30 ABC from Ann Arbor. Wisconsin is a 4.5-point favorite. So Desmond takes the spread, but the other way around. All right, Miami, Virginia Tech. This is a game that was supposed to be on ESPN2, but did get moved to ESPN because of all the postponements this week. And it's a chance to see our boy De'Ara King in the spotlight. Desmond, little tidbit for you. Miami accounted for 620 total yards last Friday night against North Carolina State in a game that they won. De'Ara King was responsible for 86% of those yards. That's 536 yards. Desmond, this man is single-handedly carrying his team. His team may not be great, but he is single-handedly carrying his team.
They are top 10 right now. They are top 10. The only loss.
Because of De'Ara King. And he had all 5 touchdowns. He accounted for all 5.
Of course he did. He man's a monster. This blowout this week. 41-30. Derek King, he's in the top 5 discussion for Heisman candidate. And honestly, I was with Trevor Lawrence out the last 2 weeks, and they lost. I know it wasn't his fault because he was injured, but what does that have to do with this? Do we see someone else edge up to the first spot? I mean, not his fault that he missed 2 weeks, but
no, I was about to say the same thing. I think if things work out, we could see Miami in the ACC championship game because Miami still has to play Notre Dame. So theoretically, if Miami beats Notre Dame, Miami and Clemson wins out, Miami, Notre Dame, and Clemson would all have 1 loss. Miami would have the tiebreaker over Notre Dame. Notre Dame would have the tiebreaker over Clemson, and Clemson would have the tiebreaker over Miami because they would have all beaten each other. So then it comes down to, I think it's head-to-head against other teams, like common opponents. And so you look at common opponents, and I believe all 3 would have played Virginia Tech. And I think Clemson, I don't know, you have to look at that. So it would be really interesting. And you're right, we could see. And now I do want to clear up something. Clemson's loss to Notre Dame was because of the defense, not because of Trevor Lawrence. DJ Uyunglele played very well. He had like 435 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, you can't ask the man. To
I say play. I'm just saying like that. Like everyone's gonna be like, oh, Clemson has one loss, but
Right.
like Trevor Lawrence didn't play. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. So we'll see what happens. I have Miami winning this one as well, 45-20. Virginia Tech is a favorite at home. I don't know if Vegas is
Against
drunk.
Miami?
Yeah, I don't know if Vegas is drunk, blind, or both, but yeah. And I heard you said you had Miami winning 41-30. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. ESPN 11 a.m. kickoff from Blacksburg, Virginia, Lane Stadium. We'll see who's riding high after that one. All right, Desmond. Speaking of Notre Dame, let's stay in the ACC for a little bit. Notre Dame, Boston College.
You know what, George? We that technically can be our upset pick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. Not a top 10 team being an underdog. No, sorry, that's not an upset pick, Desmond. All right, Notre Dame, Boston College. This is what's called their red bandana game. So Wells Crowther, he was a he worked in the World Trade Center and happened to be working there on September 11th, 2001. And he was before even working there in his childhood, he was famous for always carrying a red bandana. When he played sports, it was always underneath his clothing somewhere. And so he happened to have this red bandana, and he saved like 30 people's lives. He basically used it to just breathe through the smoke. And so since that, tragic day in September, they've always honored him in some way each year around Veterans Day. And this year, every year they have a red bandana game, and this is the year. And they wear cool uniforms. And Desmond, I encourage you to go Google the Boston College red bandana uniforms this year. They are absolutely fire. They are incredible. They've got the red bandana, I'm talking like a natural red bandana that texture or like design. That's the numbers. Yeah. That's what the numbers are out, or like the color of the numbers are, which is really cool. But they take on Notre Dame. Desmond, the last time Notre Dame beat a number 1 team, it was the Convicts versus Catholics game. That's Miami versus Notre Dame. They beat Miami at home. And then guess what? This was 1993, Desmond. They lost on the road to Boston College. Sound familiar? They beat the number 1 team in Clemson at home. And then they go on the road to play Boston College. Desmond, with that red bandana game, Boston College is 3-3 all time. They haven't beaten the top 5 team though since 2002. I want it to be very, very close, and I think it will. But ultimately, I think it's going to be Notre Dame that wins. And I have Notre Dame winning 34-33.
You got me nervous there for a second, George. I thought you're about to pull a Des there and go really big upset.
Who do you have in this game?
Notre Dame. And honestly, I don't think I respect the story, and I didn't know about that. That's really interesting. But I'm sorry, I don't think it's gonna be close. I'm glad that they're, honoring him and everything, and hopefully, he's watching. But 56-28.
Oh,
I don't think it's gonna be close, George. I mean, I really don't, and I feel like Notre Dame's gonna win out, and it's gonna be interesting. But I don't know. I feel like when it comes down to it, I feel like Notre Dame is gonna have a problem in the ACC championship. That's just my guess.
We'll see. 13.5 point favorites on the road for the Fighting Irish in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. So we'll see what happens there. 2:30 kickoff time on ABC. All right, Desmond, we go to keeping that same kickoff window at 2 p.m. This one's on ESPN Plus, and it's a battle of the UT schools between UTEP and UTSA. And Desmond, you're probably thinking, George, why do we pick this game? Well, you know what? Because we didn't have many Texas schools. Somehow A&M's game got postponed, and TCU's our scary good game, and Texas Tech and Baylor were already playing each other. Texas is on the bye. I had to pick some Texas schools, and so UTEP and UTSA, they're both 500. Desmond, Um, I would love to see UTEP upset UTSA, but it's not going to happen. I have UTSA winning this one 45-30. Big.
I agree, George. I have UTSA winning 27-20. I do think it'll be close.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting, but I mean, yeah, either way. And to all our friends in El Paso, please, we hope everything starts to calm down a little bit. COVID-19 has spiked dramatically there. In fact, UTEP's next home game is being played in Midland, Texas, because of spikes in the El Paso area. So our thoughts are with you, city of El Paso. Please get things under control. Anyway, so we move forward on that somber note. Arkansas and Florida, one of the only SEC games being played this week. And Sam Pittman, the Arkansas head coach, is not going to be there on the sideline because he tested positive for COVID-19. So, Desmond, Barry Odom, he's the Arkansas offensive coordinator. He is going to be taking over for Sam Pittman. And he has experience coaching teams in the SEC. He was the head coach at Missouri, and he beat Florida twice, including once in Gainesville. But I think Kyle Trask is the main reason why this game will be a winner for the Florida Gators. And just like A&M, Florida beats Arkansas by the same exact score, 42-31. Desmond?
Low scoring, George, 24-17. And I honestly thought that you're going to choose Arkansas to win this one.
No, after I saw them,
you've been talking highly about Arkansas the last couple of weeks.
I have, and after seeing them play A&M, 42-17 was what the score was until the fourth quarter when Arkansas put 2 garbage time touchdowns on the board. I think Florida and A&M are about equal, so I feel like it's going to be the same type of game. I like Arkansas. I think they've drastically improved from the last few years. But I think they're going to finish 5-5 is what I think is going to be their record. But I still think Sam Pittman is going to be the coach of the year by far in the SEC because the man took a team that had won 2 games in the last 3 years, and he's now won 3. No, he's won 2. No, 3. He's 3. Yeah, 3. 2 or 3. Basically, he's either won the same or an additional game, which is crazy in 1 year than versus the last 2. No, and that's on primetime ESPN, 6 p.m. All right, last 2 games, and then we let's speed through these a little bit quick so we can get out of here. SMU Tulsa. All right, Desmond. Tulsa, a team that also has seen some comeback, from the last few years. They've always traditionally been poor. They're in the contention to play for the American Conference Championship. They need this game against SMU. This will probably decide the winner or the team that takes on Cincinnati in that conference championship game. I like Tulsa's offensive game plan. They love to eat the clock up and run the ball, and that's what SMU cannot do on defense. They're very bad run defense team. My gut is telling me that if there's a game this week, I need to take the upset. I'm taking the upset. Desmond, I like Tulsa to upset SMU. I think Tulsa is they're a good team. And I think they're going to win 41-34. So watch out, Mustangs, watch out.
I don't know, George. I'm going to go the opposite. I think it's going to be a blowout. I have SMU winning this 44-10, pony up, baby.
All right. Well, our final game before we get to a special game pick is Northwestern and Purdue. Northwestern 23rd ranked. They are ranked in the top 25 for the first time in at least 2 years, which is crazy to me to think that Northwestern is actually ranked in the top 25. But this game, Desmond, Northwestern and Purdue is a matchup of undefeateds. Another very strange undefeated matchup in the Big Ten. And most likely the winner of this game will play for the Big Ten title just because of the way things are happening with Wisconsin. I really like Purdue. Rondale Moore is really good. We don't know if he's going to play, though. He hasn't played the first 2 games, and we don't know if he'll play this week. And because of that uncertainty, I don't have enough in my gut to take Purdue. So I'm going to take Northwestern close, 34-31. And they'll just barely cover the 3-point spread. What about you?
I agree, George. I definitely think it will be a very close game. I have it by a touchdown. Late fourth quarter touchdown. Northwestern 20, Purdue 13.
Yeah, and that's on Big Ten Network. For a new kickoff time announced at 4 p.m. All right, Desmond, one more game pick before we get to our scary good game in our small schools. As it is, the first time ever in the over 100-year history of the Masters, it is being played in the fall. It is currently being played right now. They had a rain delay to actually start this year's Masters, and so tee times were pushed until about 8 a.m. Central Time, 9 a.m. Eastern. And Tiger completed his round. I am glad to say he is tied for third after the first round with a 4 under par finish, which is pretty good for his first round. He had a nice birdie on 16, which is known as one of the toughest holes on Augusta National. So Desmond, I ask you this. We're not really big in golf, and I don't know we really cover golf much on the Fifth Quarter podcast, but who you got in the 2020 Masters?
I had two people, all right? But I switched. But now I kind of feel like switching back just because I saw standings. At first, I don't even know how to pronounce his name again, but I did a little research. Shuffle? I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Xander Schauffele.
Yes. I put him at first.
Okay.
But then I was like, I don't know, bro. I like Big Bubba. I'm gonna put him in there. So then I switched it, George. But now I kind of want to go back just because I saw the standings.
Yeah, Bubba Watson hasn't even teed off yet, and I think he's like 4 over already. I don't know.
Hey, but I've heard he's had some promise to come back to his glory days, bro.
All right, so who you taking? I need your final pick. You're gonna take Schauffele? He's at 5 under. He's tied.
Yeah, I'm
Come on, Desmond. Come on.
Yeah. If Bubba wins, I'm gonna be pissed.
I mean, Bubba is 2 under currently, so he's not too far behind.
I'm gonna go Xander.
Okay, so Xander Schauffele. And to surprise nobody, I am actually going to take probably one of the longest odds to win the Masters, but I think he'll do it. I gotta go with my boy, the mean green fighting Tiger machine. I gotta go with Tiger Woods. He's gonna win his 6th Masters and second time he'll have gone back to back. He's looked good. He's playing good. I think he's in a position where all he has to do is play well over the next few days, and he'll be fine. Like, he will be in a position to win. If I had to pick another guy besides Tiger, I would actually take. I'd actually take Justin Thomas. I think Justin Thomas is a guy that kind of needs a rebound. American from California, I believe, actually. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And you can catch Master coverage today and tomorrow on ESPN, and Saturday and Sunday with the final round, a very special morning final round from Augusta National on CBS. So you can catch all that there. College Game Day will be live from the Masters tomorrow morning, starting at 8 a.m. Central, Saturday morning, not Friday morning. Saturday morning, because it is Thursday. And from 8 a.m. Central Time until kickoff starts at 11. All right, Desmond, we go to our scary good game, and I am glad to inform that I am not standing with a goose egg in the win column against the spread anymore, as Arkansas did it. They upset Tennessee. They covered the spread. I could not be more happier. Oh, my God. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. It's a miracle, Desmond. It's a miracle. So I'm going for my second straight miracle. TCU, West Virginia. West Virginia is a 3-point favorite at the time of recording. And Desmond, they cover. Max Duggan's good, but they cover. Cover by 3 points. Or they're 3-point favorites, they cover that.
George. I always win when I choose against you. But I was going to do this anyway because TCU is undefeated in the Big 12 right now in all their away games. TCU is probably the better team. I think that they're going to win outright.
Okay. We'll see what happens. Desmond, I'm one game behind you. I'm one game behind you.
This week's gonna be a big week. You could tie, or I could stretch my lead.
This is true. We'll find out. And we'll get to our small school here to close things out. Middle Tennessee and Marshall. Marshall's back on the field. They defeated UMass last week. Big. No need to talk about that one, Desmond. It was big. 51-10 was the final. No need to worry because everything was good. Everything was chilling. I got my Marshall shirt on. Everything is living up. Middle Tennessee, they beat Rice, but that was, I'm going to call that a fluke because you don't win when you win in double overtime with triple, quadruple doinks off the uprights with a game-winning field goal by Rice, or attempt by Rice that hits the upright 4 times without something magical happening. And Desmond, you mentioned this early on in the year, actually. Saturday will mark the 50th anniversary of the horrible plane crash that Marshall suffered on November 14th, 1970. Coming home from a game against East Carolina, the plane crashed after rough turbulence and fog, killing all 75 members on board, including the head coach and 35 members of the football team. It is a very somber anniversary. It's the worst plane crash involving North American sports. It's worse than something that happened actually mere events later, or I think it was actually prior. March 2nd, Oklahoma State had an issue there as well. Or Wichita State had an issue. And then Oklahoma State had a few years ago actually had a plane crash as well with their basketball team. But either way, this is a big anniversary. They're going to have a lot of on-field remembrances and showing more plaques and such. If Marshall loses, Middle Tennessee needs to be kicked out of the Conference USA because they're just ruining bad things. They beat Rice after Rice missed a quadruple doink field goal. And then they would beat Marshall after Marshall's celebrating the 50th year of this plane crash. Like Middle Tennessee, really? No. Marshall wins. They move to 7-0. Good times in Huntington, West Virginia. How about the Army Black Knights?
Yes, sir, George. Going a happy note right here. They did beat Mercer 49-3.
Congratulations. You beat a big team.
Okay, George. So when you're talking about your team winning, did you hear me disrespect them one time? No.
Yeah, because they're 6-0 over teams that are actually fairly decent in comparison to Army, who's beaten 3 FCS teams.
George, we play Tulane this week. As you said, they are the underdog. So when they beat Tulane this week, I don't want to hear this slander about how Army doesn't play anybody.
Oh, I can't wait to come back next week and talk about how Army lost to Tulane. But we'll see. New Orleans, ESPN Plus, 11 a.m. kickoff for that Army-Tulane game, and 11 a.m. CBS Sports Network kickoff for the Marshall game. And with that, we are going to sign off, and we want to keep you noted that 2 weeks, we will be celebrating our 50th total podcast episode. Stay tuned for that. We should have lots of things in store, lots of questions to answer from you guys, as we did with our 20th episode where we did a mailbag. We're looking at possibly doing that for this 50th episode. So stay tuned to our social medias and to our upcoming podcast episodes. But for now, we salute our veterans. We thank you for your service, and we will catch you next time. I'm George Koff. He's Desmond McLaughlin saying so long for the Fifth Quarter Podcast. And please, thank you for your service. Gig 'em Aggies, Wreck 'em Tech, wear a mask. Adios.